Best way to look at opportunity is unaccounted for carries. And that's some of the research that SI fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano has been focusing on for all 32 teams. Fabs, your Excel spreadsheets, they must be going berserk because you've been nonstop spreadsheets for the last couple of weeks with all your research lately.
Yeah, Excel is certainly getting a workout here after the NFL schedule release, and of course, all of the available targets and touches data, which you're going to be able to find at si.com/fantasy. And we'll start off with the available touches, and the Panthers come in at number one at 252. But this is deceptive. Christian McCaffrey played 3 games last year. Mike Davis left for Atlanta. He had 224 touches, which means what, Bill? Christian McCaffrey is going to get the ball a lot, and we all know that. That's why he's the consensus number one overall pick in fantasy drafts for 2021. Behind him, it looks like it could be Chuba Hubbard, who they drafted a few weeks back as the handcuff for McCaffrey. But those 252 touches are going all into CMC's wallet.
And then also on that unaccounted for touch list, we have Cam Akers from the Rams, who's climbing up a lot of rankings, climbing up ADP. We know that Malcolm Brown left Los Angeles. What do you make of the second year back for the Rams?
Yeah, he's a big time breakout candidate. I've seen him in best balls going in the late first round. At worst, he's a second round pick. You mentioned Malcolm Brown, 124 touches now out the door, which means that Akers, who averaged 12 touches a game overall last year, I think he'll probably get into that 16 to 18 touch range per game, if not more. Darrell Henderson also in the mix, but certainly Cam Akers is the Rams running back to target in fantasy, with Henderson being more of a mid to late round pick.
All right, rounding out that top five teams or backfields with unaccounted for carries. You mentioned the Panthers up top. The Jets, they lost a lot of carries. Frank Gore no longer with New York. We have the Green Bay Packers. Jamal Williams is now playing for Detroit. The Bengals, we know Giovanni Bernard is down in Tampa Bay. And then for the Rams, we just mentioned Malcolm Brown no longer in Los Angeles. Let's move over to the backfields with just not a lot of carries, not enough carries to go around, thanks to some free agent acquisitions. Fabs, let's start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the addition of Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah, that backfield's going to be a nightmare for fantasy managers. You got Lombardi Lenny, who was a Super Bowl hero and a postseason hero for the Buccaneers. He had 133 touches last year. Ronald Jones is still in the mix at 220 touches from a year ago. You bring in Gio Bernard, who had 171 touches, but also keep in mind that that's more than he probably would have gotten if Joe Mixon was 100%. And Mixon obviously is a big winner in this whole thing. But this backfield is going to be a three-headed monster. Gio Bernard is going to be utilized in pass-catching situations, maybe like James White was, and it continues to be in New England. So if you draft Rojo or Fournette, they should not be as probably anything more than running back fours in most leagues, and Bernard's maybe worth a late flyer in a PPR league, but that Buccaneers backfield looks like it's going to be pretty tricky.
And then another tricky backfield is the situation in Las Vegas. Josh Jacobs, he was a workhorse, but now they added Kenyon Drake in the offseason, and that's going to really eat into some of the carries that we'd expect from Josh Jacobs.
I think it's going to be bigger in terms of the target opportunities, right? I think Jacobs could still and will still lead that team in carries, but he had 306 touches last year, Bill. That's not going to happen with Kenyon Drake in the mix. He had 264. So to quote Seinfeld, we now hate the Drake because that Las Vegas backfield could be quite confusing on a week-to-week basis. Forget about Josh Jacobs seeing any sort of continuing increase in terms of the reception numbers. That's not going to happen with Drake in the mix. So Jacobs goes from a late first round pick to now a third or fourth rounder. And as for Drake, he's no better than a low end flex starter. And I not feel comfortable with him as a regular flex starter on my fantasy team, even in PPR formats.
So we just went through a handful of these backfields, both that are expected to see some more carries or expected to see some less unaccounted for carries. Fabs, you did all 32 teams, which is right now, it's on Sports Illustrated. You can go check out more of Michael Fabiano's excellent work by going to si.com/fantasy.